is Ian Vincent Chavez, and I belong to group number 3. Our report is about bar graph, and allow me to introduce to you to my teammates who will be discussing the following. Lindy Rael Gaviola, who will give us the learning objectives. Russell Optina, who will give us a background or a short history about the bar graphs. Followed by Abigail Dave Estelori, who will give us some terms with definition to our topics bar graph. Sean Lawrence, Corres, and John Wilson will provide it with 2 problems with solutions. Mark Peter Bausing will then give us the conclusion, and followed by Dennis Floyd Kellogg will give us the use and importance of bar graphs. And without further ado, let's get started.
Good day, everyone. So I am Lily Rael A. Gaviola. The learning objectives of this video is to discuss about bar graph. By the end of this video, we should be able to identify bar graph's definition, like what is a bar graph? Then bar graph's history. When was it invented or who invented bar graph? Then bar graph's terms with definition, followed by a sample problem of the bar graph. Then bar graph's generalization and conclusion. Last but not the least would be the application or the use and importance of the bar graph.
Good day, everyone. My name is Russell Optina, and today I'm gonna present to you the history of bar graphs. Bar graphs are widely used today, and they come in a variety of shapes and sizes. But who designed them and where did they come from? Many sources claim William Playfair with creating the bar chart. However, in a 13th century publication called The Latitude of Forms, a Frenchman named Nicole Oresme developed a bar chart to depict velocity of a continuously accelerating object against time. Newton is credited with being the first to write down the laws of motion, but it's worth remembering that someone else had a grasp of velocity and acceleration some 300 years before Newton. Nicole shows time along the x-axis in this early graph. And that's all for the history of bar graph.
Good day, everyone. I am Abigail Dave Estelori, and I will be the one who will discuss the terms and definition, which is the definition of our topic with bar graph and sample of graph. A bar graph is a graphical presentation of categorical data using rectangular bars, which the length of each bar proportional to the value they present. Bar graph has the horizontal axis of chart present the categorical data, while the vertical axis of chart define discrete data.
Hi guys, I'm Jonathan Novamos, and this time we have a sample problem. Sample number 1. Tingnan mo nga UTC, support complete auditorium. There are 10 stars color red, 15 stars color white, 7 stars color blue, and 20 stars color gray. In total of 53 stars in Kapartina. As we look at the graph, there are different numbers depending on the color. The gray stars have the highest number, while the blue stars have the lowest. That's all.
Example number 2. An IT student was tasked to create a program that could record how many hours was the student using the computer per day in 4 days. On the first day, the student was using the computer for 6 hours because he was working on a project. On the second day, the student was using the computer for 4 hours because he had to attend online classes. On the third day, the student was using the computer for 8 hours because he was playing video games. On the last day, the student only used the computer for 2 hours because he just had to check if he had anything else to do. So the first objective is to draw a bar graph representing number of hours the student was using the computer in a day. The second objective is to identify on what day was the student using the computer the longest, and identify also the least hours the student was in front of the computer. So this is our table. It is the number of hours the student was in front of the computer. So on day 1, the student was using the computer for 6 hours. On day 2, the student was using the computer for 4 hours. And on the third day, the student was in front of the computer for about 8 hours. And on the last day, the student only used the computer for 2 hours. So the longest hours that the student was in front of the computer was on day 3, and it was 8 hours. And the least number of hours that the student was in front of the computer was on day 4, because he was only in front of the computer in 2 hours.
I'm Mark Peter Vivosing. The learning objective of this video is to discuss about the conclusion of bar graph. To summarize it all up, there are plenty of different chart and graphs available out there, and bar graph is just one of them, since my teammates has already given example of how to use bar graph, provided a brief history of bar graph, defined it, and will give you the use and important using it. I will leave you with a quote by JCR Leak leader Robert Taylor that says, about 85% of my thinking time was spent getting into a position to think, to make a decision, to learn something I needed to know. Much more time went into finding or obtaining information than into digesting it. Hours went into the plotting of graph. When the graph were finished, the relation were obvious at once, but the plotting had to be done in order to make them so. That's all. Thank you.
And I will be covering and discussing the part of bar graph application, use, and importance. So what are the use and importance of using bar graph? How can we use bar graph? And who uses bar graph? Well, allow me to start off by answering that last question. Who uses bar graph? Basically everyone, or practically everyone, can use bar graph. Not just our math teachers. We students can use bar graph. Not just in school, but also after we graduate school. How can we use bar graph? Well, using bar graph is a good and effective way to compare items from different groups. Using bar graph is an effective and powerful visual tool to use in presentations and reports. Using bar graph is one way to let your reader, your audience, your viewer basically identify patterns and trends a lot easier than using a normal table with numeric data in it. Now, having said that, use bar graph wisely.